How's it going, everybody? For today's beer review, we're going to be taking a look at Oskar Blues Gubna, an Imperial IPA. So this is Gubna by Oskar Blues, and I know the name is weird. I'm sure many of you know what that's from. If you don't, that's kind of one of those stereotypical things British people say, like, "Oi, Gubna!" or "Bloody hell!" those kind of things. As you know, they put strange things around the lip of the cans. This one is no different. Here it says, "Does your can science bother you? Tell the truth." And this other one says, "Disestablishmentarian." That's a big word. This is a Imperial IPA, as I obviously just said. Comes in at 10% alcohol by volume. And the only other information is, give the Gubna a big harumph. Harumph. So, I guess that's a swig. We'll do that. I'm going to be taking that swig out of my Dogfish Head branded IPA glass, so I have no more words. Let's get the can cracked open and see what the Gubna's got in store for us, huh? Straight out, the color is not quite as dark as I was expecting for an Imperial. It's very clear gold, actually, straight out of the can. I'm going to give this a pretty hard, heavy-handed pour here. It has a decent head potential. Actually, it's a slow-forming head, but it's a good head potential, and that's impressive for how high the alcohol is. That's an easy, almost 2 fingers of just slightly off-white, super dense and creamy-colored head. Holding this one up into the light, it's what I would call orange-kissed clear gold. Just slightly a few shades darker from your standard domestic brew. As far as smell is concerned, really good. Just a little bit of spice, apples, grapefruit, hops, just slight touches of mango and pineapple. It's not over the top tropical sweet though. I really like the way this one is smelling. It's not too much of anything. It's not overly juicy, overly sweet, overly dank, or bitter. It's just kind of this nice balance. But there is some unmistakable spice to it that is working nicely, at least as far as the smell goes. Let's go ahead and give it a taste. Nice. Very crisp, quick finishing, and refreshing for it being 10% and for it being a double. I'm actually kind of surprised at how sessionable this would be, being such a big, potent beer. I mean, up front, you've got light apple, almost like apple juice. Mild carbonation bite, nice medium sweet grapefruit, and then it ends on a slightly bitter hoppy finish. It's not too bitter though. Really well balanced. I'm pleasantly surprised. A lot of the time you get these Imperial IPAs and they just taste like caramel or malt bombs, even though they're within date. And speaking of date, I'm kind of impressed with myself on getting it this fresh, since I live nowhere near the brewery. This was canned on March 30th of 2015, and so this thing is barely, like, this is not even 2 weeks old, so it is super, super fresh. And it says calm like a bomb. I don't know. It's one of those weird Oskar Blues things that they do, huh? That brings me to a little interesting subject I'd like to talk about real quick. And saying that, look at the lacing. Look how solid that is. That is awesome. Whenever reviewers talk about the bitterness of something, it's not accurate usually. I will be the first to admit that when I tell someone that this isn't bitter, if they're not as well versed in IPAs as I am, then they're probably going to think it's bitter. Whenever I see a review and it's someone who's way more well versed in IPAs and has way more knowledge and experience than I ever will, and they tell me it's not bitter, I may think it's bitter. It's all about palate fatigue. It's a very real thing, and it changes our perception of bitterness. As we get more and more used to bitterness, we kind of basically, our senses die off and we become desensitized to bitterness. And that's why, more than any other beer, I think IPAs are that beer. It's kind of like a thrill seeker. We continue to seek the more and more extreme when it comes to IPAs. And I think it's because we as a whole, a people, beer drinkers, craft beer drinkers, are slowly becoming victim to palate fatigue. Not all of us. I try personally to kind of mix things up. I'll have an IPA one day, then a bourbon barrel stout, then a Scotch ale, and I keep things mixed up, so I'm kind of keeping my taste buds always on their toes. But a lot of people are kind of under the impression that when you say the word craft beer, that just means IPA. Like a lot of people, when you talk to them, I'm not sitting here complaining like, oh, you damn hipsters, but it's like you talk to them and they say, yeah, I like craft beer. Like what? Oh, IPAs. Like there isn't anything else. That being said, the demand for IPAs is becoming greater and greater, and that leads to more and more breweries doing multiple types of IPAs. You've got these different IPAs for different people of different palate fatigue levels. Take Green Flash, for instance. They've got their 30th Street Pale Ale, which is basically like a standard IPA. You keep going up from there till you get to like Palate Wrecker, where even I think it's super bitter. But some people I've seen on forums complain that they can't taste the bitterness of Palate Wrecker, which blows my mind. But then I have to think back to a time when I was younger and I would try a sip of standard Guinness Draft and say, oh, this tastes like cold black coffee mixed with rubbing alcohol. It is the most bitter, foul thing ever. But as we gain a taste for it, particularly bitterness, it's just a sense that's kind of dulled. So, I think it's good to kind of keep things mixed up and keep them lively. If you're into IPAs, that's good. But basically what I'm rambling on about is just because I say that this is really good. Just because I say that this isn't very bitter, some people may find this more bitter. So what I'm basically saying is don't just base your total judgment off of a score, a written review, or my reviews. You still need to experiment for yourself. But I think I'm pretty good at least listing out flavors. So I've got to say, the aroma on this is really opening up, and I'm starting to get a lot of like orange juice, honey, and honeysuckle. It's really tasty. But at the end of the day, man, that's a killer session double IPA. That's how I'm perceiving it. I could throw back a 4-pack of these because they come in quite easily. So as far as scores go, quite generous with this one because it's quite good. As far as representation of the style goes, definitely an A. I would give this probably a high A, but not an A+. Probably like a 80, probably an 80, like a 95, 96, somewhere in that range. As far as my own personal score goes, I would give it an A+, because I'm really enjoying this. Definitely up there, like in the 97 is what I would give it, my personal score. Ways I think they could improve this brew a little bit. Not much. There's not a whole lot of room for improvement. The way it's tasting to me, it could do with some pear. Something a little bit tart in there. And I think it could do with just a slight more bittering hops. Because when your alcohol gets that high, it starts to mask some of the bitterness. If you read their commercial description online, they talk about how this was their beer where they're experimenting and trying to approach 100 plus IBUs. You can do that chemically, but when your alcohol is that high, you start to get some malt content. It masks over a lot of that bitterness. So Add some more bittering hops and maybe something tart in there, not like a sour, but like a pear, just a little bit. And I think this would be a top notch. But as it stands, really high, A to A plus IPA. Highly suggest this one if you're a fan of the style. That has been my review of Oskar Blues Gubna Imperial IPA. Hope you guys enjoyed the beer review as always, and stay tuned for the next one.